we want to introduce them to the Vermont landscape, and there's no better way to do that through UVM natural areas. This one is our highest one, of course, the ridgeline of Mount Mansfield, and it gives the students an overview of the landscape that's their classroom.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Across the Fence. I'm Jolie Whitney. Today we're showcasing UVM's biggest classroom that provides a mountain's worth of research and learning opportunities. In a minute, we'll talk with the UVM Institute Associate Director, who's been supporting field research opportunities across UVM's natural areas and working to establish a statewide mesonet site. We'll explain what that means later in the program. First, we want to take you on a hike to the roof of Vermont, Mount Mansfield. That's where Ben Willis went with a group of students who are studying the natural history of the Green Mountain State.
This is Mount Mansfield, and it might be Vermont's largest classroom. UVM students are taking the gondola up Mount Mansfield for a hands-on lesson in Vermont's ecology.
In the Rubenstein School of Environment and Natural Resources at UVM, every student has to take this class going into their first year. And so this is Natural Resources 1010. And we basically talk about the natural communities of Vermont, the natural history, and we go around and explore those topics with these labs.
The students are heading up to the top of Mount Mansfield, and as they ride the gondola up, they're looking at the changes in forest composition, so different types of trees, and considering what factors are affecting the forest composition in this particular area, and how that compares to places they've seen in the past few weeks, like Jericho and Rock Point.
So we're gonna start our ascent to the ridge line right now. If you want to, you can also stay back and explore this area, but we're gonna try to chat with you about the natural areas going up to the ridge line. Really happy about
Through this trip and others to UVM's natural areas, the hope is to inspire students to become better stewards of the land. The gondola ride up is just the first step. Students can choose to join the TAs on a trek to the summit, a short but challenging hike. We are treated to stunning views of the surrounding landscape. The trail is steep, the heat intense, and the summit still a ways off, but the students push forward, determined to reach the top. And then we're there. While the students stayed on to enjoy the view, I headed back down the mountain to speak to Professor Walter Pullman, who leads the class.
This is just a magnificent field trip for the course, Natural History and Human Ecology. It's for 300 students in the Rubenstein School, a full year course, and we want to introduce them to the Vermont landscape, and there's no better way to do that through UVM natural areas. This one is our highest one, of course, the ridgeline of Mount Mansfield, and it gives the students an overview of the landscape that's their classroom. And we're beginning our Mountain to Lake module, essentially, which is 3 weeks. We'll be on Mount Mansfield today. Next week we'll be down in Potash Brook, and then 2 weeks from now we'll be out on the Marcel Melisira studying the lake.
As Professor Pullman stated, this year-long class takes full advantage of UVM's incredible natural areas system.
We kicked the whole thing off with going to Centennial Woods. That was their welcome to UVM. It works out terrific because Centennial Woods, urban forest, but incredible diversity of trees. The geology is really interesting. It's a great welcome. So we use that. We use East Woods, Shelburne Pond, Colchester Bog, you name it. we make use of the natural areas for our classroom for our first year students.
But for Professor Pullman, the trip to Mount Mansfield stands out above the rest.
Coming to Mount Mansfield is just a great moment. Highest point in Vermont. We're studying geology right now in natural communities, and elevation gradients are just great for studying diversity. So they're peering out over the edge of the gondola. They're seeing the northern hardwood forest transform into the spruce fir Krumholtz community. You know, by the time you're at the Cliff House, they scramble up to the ridge line and they're up on alpine tundra. So the diversity of natural communities and elevation gradients is just a beautiful way to do it, because it's pretty much like a fast trip north to Canada.
Here, the landscape itself is the classroom, and every step up the mountain is a lesson in change, resilience, and discovery. At Mount Mansfield, I'm Ben Willis with Across the Fence.
Thank you, Ben. What a beautiful story. And I'd like to introduce Joshua Benish. He supports monitoring and research activities that occur across UVM's natural areas, which includes Mount Mansfield. And last year, UVM Natural Areas celebrated its 50th anniversary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
And tell me a little bit why Mount Mansfield is such an important part of this research program, and also to you.
Yeah, Mount Mansfield has always been a place that's been near and dear to my heart. I grew up in a home in Jericho, Vermont, overlooking the mountain. I went there for my first birthday when my parents took me up the gondola for the first time.
So you guys go way back.
Yeah, way back. And then for my fourth birthday, my parents took me up the toll road for the first time, and I summited the mountain for the first time. So for me, it's a very special place, and a place that I was really able to really connect with the wilderness and be able to really set my passion for ecological monitoring and supporting the research that we do at UVM. And so overall, there's a lot of research activities and long-term monitoring activities that we have on the mountain, and we also utilize the mountain for a lot of learning opportunities, as you saw with Ben joining the NR 1010 class up on the mountain.
That's great. And you already kind of touched on this a little bit, but how long have UVM students and research been using Mount Mansfield?
Yeah, so UVM acquired the 400 acres on top of the mountain in 1859. And it was at a time where there wasn't any other conservation-related efforts across the country. And so in doing so, UVM was actually a pioneer in the land conservation movement. They particularly purchased the summit ridgeline to be able to preserve the rare alpine plants that were on the mountain and be able to do geological research up there. And so there was a long history there where UVM was doing a lot of various projects and monitoring. And in 1954, WCAX actually established its first facility up there, and that's when a weather record started as well, and also the snow stake that's up on the mountain. So we have already 70 years worth of data on meteorology up there, which is very impressive. In 1990, Senator Leahy was instrumental in procuring funding from Congress to develop the Vermont Monitoring Cooperative. It's now known as the Forest Ecosystem Monitoring Cooperative, or FEMC. There was a name change a few years ago. But the Vermont Monitoring Cooperative selected 2 long-term monitoring sites at that time. One was the Lye Brook Wilderness down in southern Vermont, and the other one was Mount Mansfield. And so with the long-term monitoring that goes on there, there's a lot of monitoring on Mount Mansfield around soils, forest phenology, and health there was new studies that were initiated around bird monitoring research through the Vermont Center for Eco Studies, and also long-term hydrological monitoring at the base of the mountain.
All right, we mentioned a fancy word at the top of this, mesonet. Can you tell me a little bit about how this program helps cultivate one in Vermont and what it means?
Yeah, so on Mount Mansfield, we have 15 different snow and weather monitoring stations on the mountain that we have deployed through this project called the Summit to Shore Environmental Observation Network. The network was established in 2022 and kind of leverages some of the long-term monitoring sites that the FEMC has been managing over time. And a mesonet is a network of weather stations, and typically you have these more sophisticated, high-resolution weather stations in other states like New York or Oklahoma that have these real-time stations that are off-grid that can be able to support the National Weather Service and weather forecasters for making very accurate forecasts, especially during extreme weather events. And so we have funding now through the Leahy Institute for Rural Partnerships to be able to start start a catalyst project of developing a mesonet. And it's going to start with leveraging some of our existing instrumentation that's on Mount Mansfield, which is kind of focused along an elevational gradient, and then also utilizing a new prototype station that's very high-end that we're going to be installing likely maybe in the Waterbury area or elsewhere, where the National Weather Service and other key partners to the project are going to kind of point us in the direction of where to install this.
Yeah, and you mentioned the other partners that you're working with. Who does that include?
So we are going to be hosting, for this mesonet project, we're hosting kind of a stakeholder meeting with the National Weather Service, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, the state of Vermont, that the Agency of Natural Resources manages a lot of high-risk dams across the state, and also kind of hydrological forecasting as well. And so a lot of these state and federal partners are going to bring all of these people together in the same room. The Vermont, Atmospheric Sciences program at Lyndon State with Vermont State University is also going to be participating in our visioning and discussions, and we're going to be working together between UVM and Vermont State University to be able to secure more funds to be able to fully establish this network in the future.
That's great. We're almost out of time, but I first want to ask, UVM recently launched a new field research, instruction, and land stewardship core. So what does that mean, and how will it support these initiatives?
Yeah, so this new core is supporting all of the various field and research activities and learning opportunities that exist across UVM's natural areas, research forests, Proctor Maple Research Center, all of these field-based facilities that we have at UVM. And it will also support some of this kind of long-term monitoring infrastructure like the mesonet and all of these instruments that we have up on Mount Mansfield. And so overall, we're trying to be able to increase accessibility to utilizing our UVM sites for research and monitoring, and also learning opportunities, and being able to showcase all of the different types of lands that the university has and manages, and being able to make that more accessible for students and researchers alike.
All right, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
And for more information about the UVM natural areas, you can visit the website on your screen, or you can see the natural areas on Across the Fence YouTube page, where we have several videos of these living laboratories. And that's our show for today. I want to thank the crew behind the scenes here at WCAX, who always help us reach the top of the mountain. I'm Jolie Whitney. This is Across the Fence. Have a good one.